how does this country grow from here?
Well, that's the big question. For the next year, it's not going to grow, is it? We're scheduled to fall into recession for 2023. But so one of his promises is that we are going to grow. It's not a specific time frame, but he hinted that at the end of 2023, the end of this year, he does hope that we are beginning to grow again, which is a pretty modest ambition. That is already baked into the forecast. So that is what the Office for Budget Responsibility believes is going to happen. Actually, right now, in the last since that November 17th statement where the forecasts were made, the conditions have improved, the borrowing costs have come down, that will support the economy, and you're actually seeing stronger PMIs, sort of just the business indicators have shown up, and confidence levels have shown up to be better than had been expected. So you could say that 2023 has started with a tiny little bit of hope.
A tiny little bit of hope. Okay, we'll take that. How's the Prime Minister doing overall? So the critics will say, look, he doesn't have the charisma of Boris Johnson, and his fans will say, well, the problem is that he's also trying to fix Tory policies that have lasted more than a decade.
Yeah, I mean, he inherits, it's been 12 years of Tory and coalition government, so, he's got no one to blame, which definitely doesn't make things easy. So it was an interesting position he took in his speech yesterday, where he was saying, I'm making 5 promises, judge me on those 5 promises. He's obviously looking at the election. If I fail to deliver on those 5 promises, then you just get rid of me. It basically was his simple pitch, which at least is kind of an honest stance. He doesn't have that sort of natural connection that Boris Johnson brings, but what Britain needs right now is effectively some kind of technocratic government that is going to basically re-establish, economic credentials. Because one of the other stories yesterday was that for the 3rd month running, foreign investors have been selling UK gilts, and that's the first time since the start of 2016 when institutions were rebalancing their portfolios for the risk of the Brexit referendum. And it's a record amount for the average over 3 months is a record. So obviously there is an issue among institutions.
I mean, why? So let's go first of all, and I loved your piece yesterday through the 5 stories. So he wants to halve inflation, he wants to deliver growth, question mark on how he does that, he wants to reduce debt, he wants to fix the NHS, and then he wants to deal with small boats.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what can he deliver on those 5?
Well, so if you take them one by one, so inflation, he wants to halve inflation next year. I mean, that's going to happen automatically. So if energy prices do not rise again at levels, way beyond where they are now, then you're going to see inflation effectively halving next year.
Right.
The growth plan, it's got to be growing before the election effectively, and he's already expected to be growing in the final quarter of next year. So and things are looking better, so he ought to be able to deliver on that. So these are not particularly ambitious. The debt falling as a share of GDP, that he's already set to hit that target by 27-28. I don't think there's any change in the deadline there. And also those targets were set when the market conditions were slightly worse. So you'd say that he has a bit of, it's easier than it was a couple of months ago. The other two, the NHS waiting lists, we have record waiting lists. He's given
this is so hard to fix. I mean, you don't fix this in like 12 months if you don't have the staff.
Yeah, and so basically the waiting list issue is a beds issue ultimately, because you've got, as he was pointing out, you've got to get the people out of the hospitals so that you can get the people into the hospitals. Otherwise, you end up with this just elongated backlogs of elective surgery. And he has pledged 3.3 billion per year for the next 2 years up until the election, effectively, which will be held by the start of 2025. He's committed this money. You'd have thought that would be, if he's going to target it, that'll give him the money and the ability to deliver that. And was it the small boats issue? I mean,
this is immigration, just for context.
Yeah,
yes, I mean, this is basically immigration. So it's what he's called
the channel crossings. Right. It's all the illegal immigrants coming across, which has caused a huge political issue in the UK. And he said that we will have legislation in place to deal with this. So I mean, technically, he could say, well, we've got the legislation in place. That's what I promised you. I didn't promise you that it would end. But obviously, he's going to have to end the crisis there is on small boats crossings. I mean, he's already done some work with Macron. He's made an agreement. It's a tricky one to resolve.